Yeah, yep. So I'm in Australia, so I won't go too much into the details and the intricacies of how our racing works over here. But from what I understand, racing across the world is quite similar. Um, and yeah, karting is generally the go-to for most people, but I also didn't start there. I'm a first generation racer, so I literally got into motorsport because I was so determined. My dad had an interest in motorbikes, and so that was where my need for speed, so to speak, started. Um, but yeah, I didn't get into racing motorbikes or anything like that. When I was 10, he took me to my local speedway. So I know you guys have that in Ireland, but I believe it's on bitumen. Ours is on dirt. So it's a big oval track. You're going anti-clockwise, basically as fast as you can. And I fell in love with it. I said to my dad, this is the sport that I want to do. And the commentators were really trying to push for juniors at the time. And they said you had to be 10 to race. And my dad was like, no, that can't be right. But I was like, no, Dad, they said it. So it took a year, and by that time I was 11, and he bought me my first car, and I was just over the moon. It was a G10 Daihatsu Charade, little hatchback, like gud kind of car, but you couldn't wipe my smile off my face. That was just the start of, I guess, the end in terms of just falling in love in motorsport and it kind of being the be-all and end-all of my life now. So I've stuck with Speedway Motorsport the whole time. So I did junior sedans up until I was about 17. That was an amazing experience being able to race for so long and so young. And it also took me over to New Zealand to compete over there as well, where I was captain of Team Australia. We've got an international competition with them, so that was awesome. But in my final year of racing, I actually had quite a severe rollover. And as most of us in competitive sport like that, you sort of weigh up, is this right for me? How is this going to change my life if I keep going? So I did take about I think it was 10 months off. That was all I could leave it. And then I got back into racing again. I was like, no, I can't leave this. So that's when I got into production sedan racing. Again, it's on the oval track, but it was through that, having that small gap, that really fueled my passion. So I was the rookie of the year. I won the Motorplex Track Championship in my rookie year, and everything kind of snowballed positively from there. We were gaining sponsors, getting more international exposure and international sponsors as well. And I stayed with production sedans for quite a while from there. But things again changed in my life. Obviously, motorsport is expensive, and I took some time off thinking again, is motorsport for me? My dream at the time when I was in production sedans was to get into late models, which is what I do now. So taking some time off helped me reassess, what do I actually want to do? Is this for me? And I think most of us in motorsport and as female racers, we have those doubts. It's sort of inevitable, and I think we'll talk about that a bit later on as well. But yeah, we think, is this sport for me? Am I going to get to where I want to go? But yeah, taking that time off, I then thought, no, motorsport is really what I want to do, and I want to keep being a driver. So then in 2019, we had the awesome opportunity to purchase a late model, which is what I do now. And these are incredibly fast cars. We're doing like 150 kilometers on the straight before turning the car in sideways in the corner. And it's just, the car's all purpose-built aerodynamics. So for me, it's changed everything up a gear in learning how the car is. And I think if I could go back in time, I would have chosen more of a STEM career to be able to do everything on the car myself. Because I work with my dad. He is a mechanic, so he teaches me everything that I need to know. But if I had that backing, I think I'd be a bit more of a powerhouse. My day job is actually a human resource advisor. So if I could go back to like 17-year-old me, I'd tell her to have gone with a more science background, because if I could have made this my full-time career, that's still the goal. But yeah, every time I can, even last night, I was in the workshop. So it's my day job back in the workshop, and then doing things like this. But yeah, that's sort of me in a nutshell. There's the highs and lows, but yeah, late models has always been my dream, and I'm so happy to be here at the moment. And I'm leading the Rookie of the Year Championships as well with my first season of it. So hopefully a sign of things to come.
Amazing, thank you so much.
Yeah, so I suppose I'll give everyone a brief background as to how I got into the sport. First of all, I don't know if I was lucky or unlucky enough to grow up in a motorsport family. My father was a rally driver when I was growing up, so it was kind of inevitable that I was going to end up somewhere in the motorsport circles. For people that don't know the disciplines in motorsport, there are quite a lot. So the rallying aspect is on it's on public roads that are closed off for the weekend. The co-driver, driver. So I followed my dad around the country when he was doing that, and all I wanted was to be a rally driver. And unfortunately, at the time, we didn't really have the resources to put me through rallying, and then we didn't really know, I suppose the entry points into motor racing, which is obviously karting. So I missed out on a lot when I was younger. I mean, I can see there's the young karters start, I think, about 6 or 7 now. So I definitely missed out on the experience there. So I had a lot to learn. I didn't join motorsport until 2015. So I'm quite late coming into the sport. And lots to learn, and learned loads in my short space of time. But yeah, eventually in 2015, after loads of part-time jobs, I bought my first race car, and I entered into the Irish Touring Car Championship in a 250 brake horsepower Honda Integra. I did that for 2 years, and I was the first woman to win in the series. Then I moved on to global GT sports cars the end of 2016 in Wales and Anglesey, and I qualified in the front row and finished 4th. So that was when I kind of started to take a bit more serious, and then I got the opportunity to go to Paul Ricard to test the GT3 car Porsche with the Sean Edwards Foundation, and eventually became an ambassador for them to promote safety in motorsport. Then in 2018, 2019, I did Striker sports cars and C1 endurance race, which we won in Anglesey in 2019. So kind of delved myself into a new discipline of motorsport in 2018 and 2019. I entered into endurance trials, which is kind of like a miniature rally. So I kind of went back to my grassroots, and yeah, won 2 titles in the endurance class championship, which was brilliant fun, and yeah, really good series. And then in 2020, I signed with CJJ Motorsports, funded by John Campion, who was an Irishman. And last year, then I got to compete in brick car and in a Porsche Cayman GT4 car, and was runner-up then in the championship last year. So in my short space of time, I've delved myself into a good bit and got loads of opportunities, and got to drive 2 Formula 1 cars. In 2019, I got to drive Derek Daly's March 811 Formula 1 car. And then in 2020, last February, I travelled to Florida to drive a Jordan Formula 1 car. So yeah, I could go on and on about all the little bits and pieces, but yeah, in my short racing career, I'm very, very lucky. I got to do loads of pretty cool things.
Yeah, hi, Natasha Firman. I'm the ambassador for Formula Women, and thank you for inviting me. It's a privilege to be here. So from my point of view, a slightly different story to these girls. I was born into the sport and grew up with it. In fact, all the circuits in the UK were pretty much like my playground, is probably the best way of putting it. My parents, their business was Van Diemen. Some of you may or may not know this business, but they built and manufactured single-seater racing cars, which were mainly Formula Fords. My mother actually was a very strong influence. She did all the buying in that business. And my father, he was the front end of the business, the engineer and running the drivers. But growing up at that age, we had a lot of racing drivers coming through our home, and a lot of them were set on the trajectory to go to Formula One. They come through karting and they were going all the way through. And so I think I had this sort of, it was drummed into me, not just at home with the racing drivers, but also going to the circuit. Everybody was met. And this is what I grew up with. In fact, the girls, we made the tea. we sat in the coffee shop and we had a drink with the boys afterwards. And frankly, that's the way it was back then. And we're talking, I'm 44 now, so we're talking quite some time ago. So I think that as I was growing up, my brother got into motorsport. He eventually became a Formula One racing driver. He was very successful himself. And I went a different way until I hit 23, 24. But to say that I loved the sport is an understatement. I loved going to the circuit. I loved going to the races, and I had a real buzz for it. But not once did I think there was a place for me in this big wide world of motorsport until a good friend of mine, he's called Martin Donnelly. Some of you may or may not know him, but he lives up in Norfolk as well. And he used to see me drive around the roads like a mad person. And he invited me. In fact, he wrote the entry form out for me for Formula Woman. And so Formula Woman back then in 2004, 10,000 girls entered, and it was for women who'd never really raced or driven before. And I genuinely hadn't. And we went through selection trials, and 16 of us raced I think it was 8 races around the UK, and I won the championship. And I'd never had so much fun in my whole entire life. I just thought, this is amazing. Why hadn't I done this before? But here I am, I'm 23, 24, and as I said, I'll go back to it. It was drummed into me. If I hadn't done karting, if I hadn't gone the right route, was this really a career for me? And as I sit here right now, obviously there are many other different routes to go. But back then, I just felt it was a very closed world. I was lucky enough to then be taken by Mazda as a works driver, and I raced for the next 2.5 years with them, doing it mainly endurance racing in the Mazda RX-8, all coloured up in the amazing colours of the car that won Le Mans, and we had a fantastic time. And I was at that time offered by a lady called Lynn St. James to go and race. She put a package together for me to race in America. But I actually think I just convinced myself that there wasn't a full and long career for me. Looking back, I have regrets on that, if I'm honest. But, we are talking 15 years ago now. And that's why I think I come with this with such passion to get women into motorsport, and to now not be knocked by this conscious or unconscious bias that I had coming through the sport, and to really go for their dreams. And that's whether it's, as a racing driver or, as an engineer, or as, as a race director. There's many different careers. And I look at it, I think, gosh, I could have gone anywhere. But at that time, I just felt, I guess I'd grown up through this sort of blinkered world and didn't grab the bull by the horns, which I could have done. And I think that now is the time, that there's amazing opportunities there, I think, for women to go for it in this sport. And I don't think it's easy. Of course I don't. But I do think that there are ways, there's these sorts of things going on at the moment. We can talk about Formula Woman a bit later, the W Series, all these sorts of things raising the profile. So, I think it's a great time to do it.
Yeah, so I suppose like Nicole, my dad was a rally driver as well. He started rallying back in the early 90s. So then about 10 odd years later, I came along and went to my first rally when I was a few months old. So that started the addiction, I suppose. So I always knew I wanted to be involved in motorsport in some capacity, whether it be competing or working behind the scenes, working on events, but I just didn't know exactly what path I wanted to go down. So when I turned 16, I really wanted to start co-driving, but between one thing and another, it just never happened until last year, when the few events that did run, I was lucky enough to sit in with a couple of different drivers in a couple of in different cars. I sat in a Fiesta R5 car, and I sat with a young driver called Natasha in a Citroen C1. She's a great little driver, so it was an absolute pleasure to be able to sit in beside her and get an experience what it's like sitting beside a 15-year-old. But then 2 years ago, I started with I got involved in Women in Motorsport Ireland. So Women in Motorsport Ireland was set up by Emma Dempsey. She set up the organisation after herself, Ruth Nugent, Amy Woods and Nicola Dempsey raced in the 6-hour endurance Fiesta race in Mondello Park. So that a couple of months later, then she set up the organisation, and then I joined on board to give a hand with kind of the rallying aspect of it and stuff, because I had a bit more of an extensive knowledge of that. So then about a year ago, I took over the organisation myself, and it's been brilliant. I studied marketing and sales in college, so I knew I wanted to get involved in motorsport in that in some way, but then Women in Motorsport Ireland really helped clear, my vision and really helped me focus in what I wanted to do and the career I wanted to get involved with. So in the last couple of months with the pandemic and all, I've started to set up my own motorsport marketing agency just to help out competitors when it comes to sponsorship, to run their social media, brand management, all that kind of thing. So
join a secret project that wasn't that secret if you googled it, and it was working on the electric vehicle. So I ended up doing 2.5 years there, which was amazing. It was brand new, so everyone wants to be part of something new, and I got a lot of experience there as well. So I worked across several teams. I worked in predominantly in integration, so the package team. I did front end vehicle integration, and I also did a stint in body structures. I got to go to China and Taiwan and do some internal auditing to make sure all the body structures work got done at a good manufacturing plant. I developed and delivered an EDV for Dyson, which is an experience demonstrator vehicle, which is like it's something that represents the car in so many ways, like some dynamics, the A surfaces, some B surfaces. Developed a HMI plugin for the steering wheel and switchgear. So there was a lot of various things I was doing. It was very dynamic. Then I got made redundant, and I looked to Formula One because I wanted something that was innovative again and fast-paced. And I had applied previously and didn't get the jobs, and I just thought it's too hard. And I applied for 3 teams, got 3 interviews and got 3 offers out of Dyson because of all that experience that I had. And it just goes to show you don't need to have worked on cars before. I definitely didn't go to a red brick university, and most of the guys in my team don't even have a degree. So they've been there for 12, 15 years, to be fair. So I got into Red Bull Racing, and now I'm an aerodynamics design engineer. I still continue with my Armour Reserves work. I'm actually off work today, and hence I'm in my car at the moment. I didn't get home in time, so I had to pull over into a lay-by. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
it was only as I kind of got older, like going to events and stuff, I realized, there'd be people making remarks about girls competing or girls going spectating, and I could never understand that, because to me, I was always getting involved. I was always very hands-on. Like when my dad was competing, I had my jobs in service, and like you'd be getting looks from people like, why is she doing that? Why? So I suppose that was kind of why when the opportunity came up to join Women in Motorsport Ireland, I kind of jumped at it too, because I was like, it is, I want to help girls, feel like they belong in motorsport, because they do. I want to help them pursue their dreams in motorsport. So I suppose, like, yeah, there was times too where, things were said about me behind my back about being involved in motorsport and what I'm doing with Women in Motorsport Ireland. But the way I see it is, it's people like that who believe, like, it's quote unquote, people have said that women don't belong in motorsport in any capacity. And I suppose that drives me more to help girls and help support them, help empower them, help inspire them to get there and to follow their dreams, because your dream is just as important as the next person's, and if you want to be involved in motorsport, that's where you should be.
I think for me the first challenge was it's something that Natasha mentioned already, was that there was not any role models that you can look at and feel represented. So I always loved motorsport. I knew I wanted to be part of motorsport, but I wasn't sure if I will be able to make it. I've studied biology. I've got a degree in biology, and then I studied fashion design. So nothing to do with motorsport, because despite I was involved in the sport at that time, I couldn't see that as a career because I couldn't see all the women in those positions. That was for me the first challenge. The second one, when I managed just to get into the international racing, the biggest issue was not just my gender, but also my age. When I joined Formula One as a steward, I was just 25. You need to have in mind that the average age of a steward is between 55 to 60, or it was at that time. So for a woman that to arrive to that environment, I was the first woman at that time that, and until now, I'm the only woman that reached the Formula One steward position, and then reach it when you were just 25. It was a really big challenge. So the first time I arrived to the office and just, so I was setting up my laptop and just getting ready to work. And someone from the organization came and said to me, "Oh, sorry, you cannot be in that place. This is just for stewards. You should not be here." I said, "Oh, I'm Silvia. I'm the steward this weekend." And he was so shocked that he was like, "That cannot be right. If that's the best thing that they have to bring, it cannot be right." And again, that was many years ago. And I think the situation and the view of everyone's regarding women in the sport changed dramatically in the last few years. But definitely at that point, it was challenging. As I said, it was not just because I was a woman, but because I was really young in the environment I was joining. And for me, I would say the third biggest challenge, it will be something that is not just related to motorsport, but also to many other industries, is that there are not enough women in senior positions yet. So in motorsport, for example, we've got a lot of, in my side of motorsport, volunteering and officials. We've got a lot of women that they are officiate as marshals. We've got a lot of scrutineers, but then when we try to find people in the senior positions, that is very small, the number. You can have, if I tell you some numbers, you can have maybe a better idea. For example, some federations, they've got to up to 20% of female officials, and mostly of them marshals. But then if we have a look at some ASNs, and including the FIA, the number of female officials in the senior level just goes down to 4%. And that is a problem that we're still facing. We're working very hard in order just to recruit more officials. The second one is to retain the ones that we already have. But the third one is promote the ones that are good. And we've got a very good women in our sport that they need to be promoted. But as I said, this is not just a problem from motorsport, but there's another problem. I'm sure you guys that they're more linked to the technical side, you will feel that there's not enough women on the technical side either. So it's some of the challenges that we need to face in the next few years.
It was only as I kind of got older, like going to events and stuff, I realized, there'd be people making remarks about girls competing or girls going spectating, and I could never understand that, because to me, I was always getting involved. I was always very hands-on. Like when my dad was competing, I had my jobs in service, and like you'd be getting looks from people like, why is she doing that? Why? So I suppose that was kind of why when the opportunity came up to join Women in Motorsport Ireland, I kind of jumped at it too, because I was like, it is, I want to help girls, feel like they belong in motorsport, because they do. I want to help them pursue their dreams in motorsport. So I suppose there was times too where, things were said about me behind my back about being involved in motorsport and what I'm doing with Women in Motorsport Ireland. But the way I see it is, it's people like that who believe, it's quote unquote people have said that women don't belong in motorsport in any capacity, and I suppose that drives me more to help girls and help support them, help empower them, help inspire them to get there and to follow their dreams, because your dream is just as important as the next person's, and if you want to be involved in motorsport, that's where you should be.
My motor racing days, there's a few things to pick up on, but you know, mirroring a little bit what Laura's saying, it was quite interesting, particularly after the competition with Formula One, which was all girls, and then I started racing, you know, mixed races traditionally, and it was quite bizarre the amount of guys that would come up and give me advice on how to, you know, do something else, to drive on the circuit, and you think, you know, they'd never give another guy advice. And you know, from my point of view, I'd smile sweetly, I'd take it. Sometimes it was helpful, more often than not it was just felt a bit derogatory, and I just found that very interesting. And I think it is a case of just smiling and just letting it go, whew, goodbye. But that I think goes for a lot of life, because you know, more generally, I've worked very much in a man's world. I work in private, in banking and finance, and it's broadly the same there, to be honest. And again, it's the same situation, the fact that there aren't enough male role models, which you know, you really need to inspire you to move forward. But I think that's coming through more and more. Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I really would just like to see that those role models come in Formula One. And you know, it's such a outward-looking series that you know, it's great having the W Series to bring women in motorsport up there, but I would love to see, you know, there's women in those roles, you know, whether they're the mechanics or, you know, it was lovely to hear from Laura on your side about the engineering, but I really do think that that's what we need in the sport. So I think we're probably all mirroring the same thing there.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear Natasha, you know, say that she grew up in a very motorsport prominent family and didn't get involved in driving. For me, you know, all I wanted to do was drive, and my parents never made me feel like I shouldn't have been driving or anything like that. And I got cars and tractors for Christmas and all this kind of thing, and it didn't feel like it was the wrong thing to do. And I suppose at the time I didn't really think about you know, any other drivers that weren't other than who I was watching. So yeah, it was not until I bought my first car and I went to Mondello that it kind of first hit that I was just a little bit different. And although there are so many more girls now involved, at the time it was kind of a shocker. Someone said, you know, are you actually driving that car? So that was the first sign that hit for me that I was a little bit different. But you know, as the girls already mentioned, the importance of role models. I mean, obviously Rosemary Smith is an icon in Irish motorsport and motorsport around the world as well, but she didn't exactly have the most traditional start into motorsport. So it's definitely more important now for younger girls to see, you know, drivers creating their paths, female drivers creating paths, and then they can see that it's possible, and hopefully that'll bring the drive into bringing more females. But you know, for me, I use being a female as a marketing point, and that's helped drive my career in motorsport. And you know, being a bit different helped me a long way. So from that perspective, you know, I made it work. But yeah, I mean, I try not to think about being different from a male. I know there's this idea that males are better drivers, and I think that's just maybe an old tale now. I think that's been proven. But yeah, it is. It's just, you know, I suppose it's one of those things. I just think the more girls that come through and the more role models they have, you know, it will improve.
Yeah, I've thought about this a fair bit in terms of what advice I would have given myself. And again, I think it still echoes a lot on having, you know, people to look up to. But yeah, if I could go back in time and have a pep talk with, like, I don't know, year 8 Laura, I think I would have said to literally just just follow what you want to do. I've often thought of trying to separate myself from motorsport, that, you know, motorsport isn't a significant part of my life, but it is. Like, it's my whole life. And, you know, in the same way you wouldn't tell someone who's into music to stop playing instruments, you can't tell yourself to stop being interested in motorsport. So yeah, just follow what you want to do. You know you best. That yeah, if you're wanting to go and be a racer or being a crew, or just, you know, the other types of behind the scenes stuff like marketing, communications, those types of things, that's still such a crucial part of motorsport. But yeah, you don't need to be a driver or an official to be involved. That yeah, you've got all those other aspects available to you. And definitely, if I could go back in time, that would have been the route that I would have taken, as yeah, a really good way to still be in the sport, but not always being a driver if need be. Yeah.
Like, I totally agree with everything Laura said there. Like, you know, it'd be silly to try and say that motorsport isn't, you know, a huge part of our lives. You know, we're so deeply involved in it, whether we realize it or not. Like, personally, my everyday life, like, first thing I do in the morning, I go on the page, I go see, you know, it's natural now at this stage, but like, definitely to anybody who wants to get involved, just do it. If you don't know, you don't try. And the thing is, it's like, fair enough, like, you mightn't like the competing aspects out of it. Like, I know I could never be a rally driver or a racing driver. Just, I'd go out and do it for fun, but I know myself, I never could. So I suppose that's why I took the whole marketing side of it. And like, you can, like, there is so many different avenues that, you know, if you try one, it doesn't work out, you know, maybe try another. It's always, you know, it's important to realize that, you know, motorsport isn't just a one road track. There are so many different branches to it that there is really something for everyone if motorsport is the route you want to go down. So, but definitely anybody who wants to get involved, like, even anybody watching, drop me a message on either Instagram or Facebook. It's Women in Motorsport Ireland. You know, if you want to talk about, you know, anything about wanting to get involved, please do. Like, I'm more than happy to help and advise and kind of guide anybody if they want.
I totally agree. I would say that if you're thinking of motorsport as a possible career, what you need to do is just try it. I mean, there are so many options. As you mentioned, we've got the option of turning a racing driver, but we've got engineers, we've got mechanics, we've got people of marketing, we've got press officers. So there is so many different options for women in the sport, and there are so many different skills that we need in motorsport, that I'm sure there is a place for all of you. What I will also say is that in order just to have more women in the sport, we need to also just to do a role ourselves, the ones that are a bit grown up, they're already in the sport, and the families, because as some of you already mentioned, I'm sure that the young girls still don't see motorsport as an option for them, and that needs to change. We are working in the FIA Women in Motorsport Commission to build the base of the pyramid. The reason why we don't have enough women on the top in Formula One so far is because the base of the pyramid is really small. Let's say, for example, for men, how many boys we've got doing karting in the European level? We've got hundreds of them. Therefore, the base of the pyramid is really wide. So the options to find someone to reach the top is much more. There's more options for them to reach that top that is Formula One. While we've got just like probably 15 girls doing karting in the let's say European level, and then the base of the pyramid is so narrow that in order to reach the top is very, very difficult. So it's not that women cannot do it, it's that we need more women in order just to show that we can do it. We've got examples of like Michelle Mouton. She was great in rallying. She was very close to win the World Rally Championship. We've got Jutta Kleinsmith that she won the Dakar. So women proved in the past that we can do it. We just need to make sure that we've got enough women just to keep succeeding and just to keep improving. And for those that because I understand that this is a technical college and you're studying engineering, I will suggest you that if you want to get involved in motorsport as well, just try to the official side of it. I mean, I've got a good friend that works is Lewis Hamilton engine engineer. So, and then she is a power unit engineer nowadays. So she started as a scrutineer. So she started in the Spanish ASN as a scrutineer, as a volunteer, and that at that point she realized that this is what she wanted to do in life. So that gave her a big background, and also gives you more CV. So when you go and you apply for another job, that also gives you another line in your CV, as I said, that it could help you just to be involved in motorsport easier, and as I said, with better options.
Great. Well, I think this is where I put my Formula Woman hat on. You know, I mirror everything that's been said right now, and, you know, dip your toe into karting if you can, and or go out and just speak to as many people as possible across the sport, and try to, you know, find a way to work with the sport somehow. But, you know, we have a great opportunity coming back. I competed in it, as I alluded to before, back in 2004, Formula Woman, and it's not been done since. Formula Woman is for girls that have either never raced or have got a small amount of experience of racing behind them. It is in cars, so you will need to have a driving licence. Back then, 10,000 girls actually registered for this and entered for this, and I know the numbers are on the up right now as the doors are open if you go to formulawoman.co.uk, and it's likely that roughly, I think, about 2,000 people will be taken forward for what's called assessment days. So on that assessment day, you know, even if you got as far as that experience, it's great fun. You go to a circuit which is near you, and you have a racing driver that sits next to you and assesses whether you can drive or not. But you get to do all sorts of things which are as important if you want to be a racing driver or go down this road. So fitness tests, interviews, media tests, written test, and a reaction test, which actually is great fun. And it's an all-round experience. And just that day alone, I remember it really well, just thinking, crikey, it was a fantastic day out. But you get to meet so many people in the team. You can speak to the mechanics while you're there. You can speak to all sorts of people. So it's a great way to really sort of see what motorsport's all about from being there as a sort of racing driver, as it were. From there, the competition is going to go into a shootout competition. We don't have the details of it yet, but I do have rough dates so that you've all got things like this in your mind. The online assessments are going to be April to September this year, and then they're going to go on to the on-track assessments I just talked about, September to December. I think the key behind this series, though, is that they, instead of racing an all-girl races at the end of it, they're actually going to, and the car's going to be announced, or the championship's going to be announced in the next few weeks. But the girls, 6 girls will be invited to race as part of a whole championship, and so there'll be the Formula Woman team against all the boys, and these girls will be trained really hard to be able to compete, and it will be quite a high level formula. So it's an amazing experience to be a part of. I mean, I did it, and I have to say I'll never forget it, and it launched me into racing with Mazda for 2 years. But as I said, it's not just about the motor racing and being a racing driver, it's about all the other areas that you could explore and get into too. So my message is the same as everybody else. Firstly, look up formulawoman.co.uk, but secondly, you know, get out there and start talking to people and seeing where you might be able to fit into motorsport.
Yeah, I suppose if you're interested in driving, definitely karting is the starting point. And even as I said to young girls who asked me about it before, even going to your local rental kart track and testing it out, because it is a big investment. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you enjoy it before you go spending money. So definitely karting is the starting point. But at the same time, if you wanted, you know, there's loads of careers within motorsport as well. So like last year when I was racing in Brick Car, a girl got in contact. I'm an ambassador for Formula Female, and a girl got in contact, and she was thinking of doing engineering in the UK. And she came across for 2 weekends of my Brick Car rounds and shadowed an engineer for the weekend, you know, just learning and seeing what it's like to be with a professional team and what they do, and just learning how a race weekend goes. So I think, you know, if you're looking for a career in motorsport, definitely get involved with, or get in contact with a team and shadow them for the weekend, and that'll give you a pretty good idea as to whether you like it or not. You know, with Formula Female, and there was a STEM initiative last year where they got 1,000 girls in carts and had them, if they didn't like the carts, they were building data loggers, and it's shown in different careers. We're in motorsports, so if you want to be a data engineer, part of a pit crew, they did pit stops and wheel changes and or marketing or whatever it is. You know, there are loads of options. So what I would say is, you know, get in contact with the team, or you know, if you want to get in contact with me or whatever, it's totally fine. But you know, get in contact with a team, send them a message, you know, put feelers out there, and just get involved and see if you like it first.
Perfect. So we got a load of questions from Instagram and from you guys in our messages. So we're going to go through some of them with some of our speakers today. So our first one was for Laura Byrnes, and it was how she manages to balance between her job and racing. You're muted. You're muted again, Laura. You're still muted, yeah. Perfect. You're unmuted.
Okay, let's see if that, I think it's going to stay. Okay. Yeah, balancing work and racing is quite tricky. So yeah, my day job does keep me really busy, and then usually I go straight from that to the workshop. You know, I'll be working there from like 5 o'clock till, you know, sometimes 11 o'clock at night, and then do it all again the next day. Biggest thing for me is I have chronic health issues as well, so I do get quite fatigued really easily. So it's just listening to myself and understanding, you know, do I need to take a rest day, or, you know, maybe have a night away from the workshop to get a really good night's sleep and things like that. But race days as well, it means just really keeping an eye on my preparation. So things like hydrating for the 2 days beforehand, because, you know, racing, you sweat so much in your suit and everything like that. Nutrition is also really crucial, so making sure you're eating the right things. But yeah, the biggest thing is just that fatigue, and 100% it's just listening to yourself and understanding, yeah, what you need to do. But I'm realizing now, as I'm I guess a lot focused on my racing, that I'm probably going to need to consider maybe going part-time with my work, because yeah, these race cars are really big, and they take a lot of time. So yeah, my after work isn't being enough at the moment. So yeah, one day it would be good to just be able to do the cars full time though. That's the goal. So we'll see where we end up.
Now I'm muted. That's great to hear though. Yeah, no, it makes sense doing part-time, but it's impressive that you're doing both at the moment. So well done. Our next one is for Nicole. You touched on it earlier, but you have a very strong social media presence and interaction with your followers on Instagram and stuff. How have you used that to further your career, and how important is it to further your career?
Yeah, so when I started Motorsport, I suppose I was kind of embarrassed about even setting up a race page, and I was kind of against the idea because I was just doing it for fun. But I soon came to learn, when, you know, opportunities came through, that, you know, it's so important to build your brand, and that's what helped me get sponsorship. And to sign for CJJ Motorsports last year was huge, and only for chipping away and you know, building that brand, I probably wouldn't have gotten that opportunity. I mean, John mightn't have seen all the work that I'd put into racing the last couple of years if I didn't do that. And he used to make the joke that, you know, I was the farmer's daughter from Roscraig. So, you know, in order to progress, you know, I needed to stop being the farmer from Roscraig that was just having a bit of fun, and I'd take it a bit more serious. And yeah, it's just hugely important. I mean, the other day I just put out a tweet about listening to a radio station that were telling jokes, and the guy that retweeted my tweet had 60,000 followers. So I mean, even if it's a small little tweet like this, you know, just help build it a little bit more. So you know, all these little things eventually build up to big things. And yeah, I suppose I used to call myself lucky, but at the same time, you know, I put a lot of work into it. And yeah, building, I hope I can continue to build a brand to as high as I can and compete at the highest level that I can.
Very good. It's very good to hear. The next question is for Silvia, because you touched on it earlier. What's the best way to build your CV to get into motorsports and motorsports in general, as well as the operations side of it?
I will say that try everything, just try different disciplines, try different type of positions or roles in motorsport. The more experience you've got and the more lines this CV's got, the easier it's going to be, more context you're going to have. And we all know that motorsport at the end of the day is a small family. So as I said before, even if you're considering a career that is more focused on engineering, just trying like the officials and volunteer side, it can help you as well to be closer to the cars. Being a marshal, it helps you just to be close to the track and feel the adrenaline around, as well as helping with all these contact lists that I just said. I think the teams and the organizations in general, they really value the fact that you show some interest from the sport and then you were willing just to keep yourself in it. So as I said, just try it as much as you can. I will suggest if you know that you've got a club next to you or you've got a racetrack, just go there and ask what you need to do in order just to join them, what you can do just to join those events. And a lot of this is going to give you like a big background in motorsport.
Perfect. That's great to hear. I hope that helps, because there's a lot of attendees here are still in secondary school, so they still have time to build up their CV before they get to college.
Just one more thing before I just forget. So I'm going to drop right now in the chat a couple of links. There's a couple of booklets that we've got in the Women in Motorsport Commission. One is about careers in motorsport, so you can see which are the different options in motorsport, and the second one is specific about engineering. So for all of you that are studying engineering, then you can have a read of it and then see which are your options.
That would be great for everyone to see. So yeah, in the chat then, perfect. And then the next one is just in the chat there, asked about marketing, and we had it from one of our Instagrams too. So I'll put it towards Hannah, since she's been marketing the Women in Motorsports side. So yeah, Hannah, how can they get involved in motorsports through the marketing side of it, and your advice for them?
Yeah, so I suppose with me, when I chose to do marketing and sales in college, I chose it just because I didn't know really what else to do, I'll be totally honest. So, but I found my calling for marketing through Women in Motorsport Ireland. So I think for anybody who wants to get involved in marketing, watch and see what like the likes of the F1 team are doing with their marketing. See, and you know, there's a lot of great resources online for motorsport marketing. But yeah, like I suppose you marketing is one of those things you have an interest in it or you don't. So if you have an interest in it and want to get involved in it, there's definitely loads of resources out there. If anybody is interested, drop me a message and I can go into more detail. I just can't think on the spot, but there's definitely more things. If anybody wants to contact me, I can tell them more about my experiences, because I could be here all night talking about them.
That would be perfect. Yeah, so Laura is Women in Motorsports Ireland on Instagram and Twitter as well. So on Facebook too. So you can contact her in those two places. So this one would be for Natasha and Nicole. So I'll start off with Natasha. What does Formula Women do to promote women in racing, like in motorsports in general, and the opportunities they can offer to the girls here, as well as applying for racing in the women's series, so Formula Women series?
Sorry, you're saying what does it do to promote?
Yeah, so like the opportunities that you guys have outside of applying for the series itself.
Well, you become part of the Formula Women Club for a start. You get a pack and you're a lifetime member, and that will mean that you'll be invited to other sort of events that are going on. There'll be conferences. I don't know what sort of timetable is going to be set for these sorts of things, but there will be other events that are run around it. But I think the key behind it is that it is there to really promote women in motorsport and to raise the profile and also to make it exciting, you know, and it's going to be hopefully on at prime time, which will again raise the bar. But it's going to be bringing quite a serious edge to motorsport and getting the girls competing in quite a quick car at the end of it. So, you know, it's not just there to promote women in motorsport, it's also there to really build on success and build these girls for success and get them along their career path and hopefully into motorsport and onto other drives.
That's amazing to hear. Yeah, so there's multiple things happening. And then we also have with Formula Female are similar, but they don't have a racing series. And Nicole Drought is one of their ambassadors. So Nicole, what opportunities do Formula Female offer girls in Ireland to get involved in motorsport? You mentioned some before of karting and things, but are there any more?
Yeah, so I think is giving visibility of the females that are competing in the sport is probably one of the first things that is promoted. And then outside of that, as I mentioned, the STEM area of it, the education side of it, you know, actually taking girls out of transition year in school and bringing them to a kart track, you know, doing the pit stop challenges, building a data logger, using the subjects that they're doing in school to show them that, you know, this can be applied to real life and this can be applied to a really exciting life within motorsport. So that side of it is massive, and you know, I really wish that I had that when I was in school, because I ended up doing accounting. So yeah, I mean, if I had that, I would have definitely gone down the route of motorsport and did something within motorsport. And it's actually very interesting to hear Silvia talk about the stewards jobs and stuff like that. It's definitely, you know, something else that I could have thought about when I was in school. But yeah, I just really like the education side of it, because it definitely would have changed my life, and I hope that it does change the girls around Ireland that are involved in it, and gives them an interest, and hopefully it builds and builds and builds, and yeah, more girls come through and hopefully working in Formula One. That's the goal.
Amazing. Perfect. So our next question is aimed at Silvia. It's the path to Formula One is getting more and more expensive. Which one series of F2 costing millions? Are there any measures being taken to reduce these costs?
I mean, right now we've got two projects that we've been working on. One already just took place this year, that is Girls on Track Rising Stars. So that was a program that was launched by the Women in Motorsport Commission, and it was open to all those girls that they were already in karting, just to take part in a selection to be the next Ferrari Drivers Academy. And it was really successful. We filled all the spots, and then I know that soon we're going to announce the second edition of it. So as you could see a few days ago, Maya Wick joined the Ferrari Drivers Academy, and that's the first time that a woman is joining that academy. And as I said, same as the male drivers, she's got a career right now fully funded by Ferrari. So that's a good step forward in that direction. So that's a good opportunity for women. But I know as well that Formula One is working very hard to make the sport much more inclusive for women, but also for other races. We want to include people from different nationalities in Formula One, and as well as people with some disabilities. So they are working in a way just to find a fund, just in order just to help these people to reach a sport. So we are working on that. I mean, the results not necessarily just to be seen straight away, but definitely we want to make Formula One and racing more affordable for everyone.
So then, does Girls on Track provide like monetary supplements or anything for the girls applying through the scheme?
So Girls on Track program is a program organized by the FIA. So basically what we do is just cover the cost of the whole selection itself. But then when we've got a driver selected, then that driver career is organized by Ferrari Drivers Academy, and they are the ones that they're going to take control of the driver's career.
Perfect. Our next question is how to get involved in motorsports when you live outside Europe. So I'll ask Laura Byrnes about this. I know yours is a bit different because you're racing within Australia, but it shows other options. So Laura, how did you find racing in Australia? And yeah.
All right, I think I'm unmuted. Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do is, if you are interested in racing, is just going to your local track, because anyone there is going to be able to point you in the right direction, or emailing your local track, COVID safe. That's basically how I got started, not being from a racing family. So we were going to our local speedway, and then asked how do you actually get involved, because we had no idea. The internet wasn't a really big deal back then either, so you couldn't Google it to find out. So yeah, being outside of Europe, yeah, just contact your local motorsport venue, and if they don't know, they're going to point you in the right direction as well. But most countries run quite similar. Like for us, for instance, we're Speedway Australia, but we report directly into FIA. So most of the governing bodies all report into FIA one way or another. So we're all one big family.
Amazing. Perfect. So then we'll do one last question, and it is, what is your piece of advice to get over obstacles faced due to your gender? So prejudice that you've received because you're a woman in motorsports, how did you overcome those obstacles? So I'll start off with Natasha. So your piece of advice.
Well, it's a good question, but I think you've just got to go for it, frankly, and follow your passion on this one. I think there's a lot of support out there right now, and if there was ever a time to find a career in motorsport, then it's now. So I would just speak to as many people as possible, and not go with any regrets.
Yeah, no, the question was, it's similar to what you answered, though, so you did answer the right part. It was when you came up to obstacles that were posed just because you were a woman. So if a man insulted you, or if they were like, oh, she did that because she's a woman, she did a bad turn, oh, it's because she's a woman. How did you overcome those situations? Like, what was the piece of advice you said to yourself when they happened?
Well, it's happened to me a lot in my life, but I think that the best way to do it is non-confrontational. Just smile and just walk away and just put it down to experience. But for me, it's always worked the best way, and just move on.
Perfect. Nicole, how do you come up with those situations?
Yeah, I think you have to change your mindset a bit. I mean, you have to remember that you're unique, like within the sport, because women are still the minority in the sport. So you are that bit different, and like what I did, I use it as to my advantage, and it's helped me come a long way in the last couple of years being in the sport. So use it to your advantage. Remember that you're different, and that might not always be a bad thing. It might help. And this year, 20 by 20 in Ireland had a huge drive in women in sport, and so I think the mindset is kind of changing for women, and I think now more than ever, people are starting to open their eyes and see it. So I think now is just the perfect time to give it a go, and just remember that it's not a bad thing, and to think of it as being unique.
Perfect. Hannah, do you have any advice for? Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh no, you were muted before. You were muted before. You're muted now. You're good.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, grand. Yeah. So basically, my piece of advice is just go for it. I've myself have, there's been comments made to me behind my back, but it only kind of makes me want to go out and makes me more determined to go and, kind of prove people wrong who think, women don't have a place in the sport. Women don't, they don't have the same abilities. So basically just go for it. And if you have a support system around you, people who believe in you and want to see you succeed, that's all you need. You don't, comments people make, it's kind of in one ear out the other. As far as I'm concerned, it's like their opinion isn't relevant, and if anything, it should only drive you to, prove them wrong, in a sense, I suppose.
You're on mute, Katie.
I did it as I was asking Laura. I did a Laura on it. So Laura, how have you overcome situations like that?
So I think I want to preface it by saying it's been rare that that I've had things happen. That it's only sort of been a handful of times where I've come back from an altercation and been like, should I be here? Should I continue? But I think the biggest things is, number one, if it is really a severe thing that someone said, like I had someone once yell at me across the pit space saying like women shouldn't be in this sport, and it was kind of like, you're a 60-year-old man, you're telling like a 20-year-old this. No worries, but report it. That's not at all something that's meant to happen. That is actual harassment and abuse. So report that to your stewards if anything like that happens to you. Secondly is just believe in yourself. There's always going to be people that don't appreciate what you do or don't like what you're doing, and it's not always because you're a female. It's just, as humans, we don't always get along with everybody, but just have it water off a duck's back. Don't listen to it. You know you best, and just follow what you want to do. Life's too short to worry about what other people are thinking or anything like that. But 100%, if you want to get involved in motorsport, it is for you, and you just need to stick with it and build that support network around you to know that when these instances do happen, it's not a true reflection of what is the circumstances. You need to stick with it.
Amazing. And then Silvia, what is your piece of advice?
So to wrap that, I would say just ignore any other people's opinion. Everybody's got an opinion, and if you get trapped just thinking or trying to make happy or try just to understand what other people think about you, that's not going to work for you. I will say focus on your goals, just work hard, and then just be ambitious. I know that sometimes the words being ambitious, and especially a woman, are not seen as a positive thing, but I am ambitious, and I think women need to be ambitious, not just in the sport but in life, and there's many things that we can achieve.
Perfect. And we can't get a hold of Laura Davies, so I think her connection went. So we're going to leave it at there for tonight, and Kat's going to do final remarks.
So we just like to thank everyone again for coming, and we hope you had a good time. We hope you are inspired, got a bit of an insight into the lives of people who actually have pursued careers in motorsports. If you'd like to follow up with any more questions, you can send them on to us. Our email is linked to our Instagram, or follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And thank you so much again to our speakers for being here. We really appreciate all your support and everything, and your participation and giving up your time to be here. Very interesting event. So great to hear about everything you have to say. So thank you, everyone.
One final thing, all the speakers' Instagrams are linked on the post we did about them on our account. So if you want to reach them directly, you can head there and reach them.
And we'll be putting this up next Tuesday, I think, on YouTube, and then we'll be putting up some of the highlights and stuff up on our Instagram and Facebook. So stay tuned to see all that as well.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.